All right, this is the Thursday, October 20th, 2022 Halliwell Review Committee meeting for this evening. We're going to start with roll call. Mr. Halliwell. Here. Mr. Girton. Here. Mr. Mail. Here. Ms. Chartier. Here. Mr. Nigerian. Here. Mr. Savini.
Here.
Mr. Simpkins. Here. And the chair is here. Public comment. Carl, you got anything to say? Okay. All right. We'll quickly have a review and approval of draft meeting minutes from our July 21st, 2022 meeting. We're out of practice, aren't we?
I know. I will.
We approve the minutes as submitted.
All right.
Second.
Thank you.
We have a motion from Mr. Mad to approve the minutes, a second from Mr. Savini. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. All right, so then we are on to our next topic of discussion. So for discussion, consideration, and action, our request for qualifications, packages, and evaluation procedure. We have it kind of easy for this evening. We did receive one package from Bargman, Hendry, and Archetype, Inc. They're based out of Boston. Thank you. So I was able to distribute their package, qualification statement, and everything to the committee this past week digitally, but now everybody's got the hard copy. Typically, how this normally would have worked if we had gotten more than one package is we'd go through scoring based on the criteria that we put forth in the RFQ. However, because we have one, we can still score them, but they'd probably receive a favorable score. Yeah. I know of the firm, and I is reviewing their package and qualifications. I think they're certainly very well qualified to provide us the services that we need at this point moving forward. So what we have now in front of us are a couple different paths, and I can make my recommendation on what I think this committee should do as we move forward. But first. Tonight, everyone's looked at the package. We could go right off the bat, make a recommendation to town council and say, okay, we've reviewed this BH&A. We feel that they're qualified to do the master plan for us, and we make that recommendation that they go into negotiations. That's option one. Option two, I know our terms are coming to an end, but prior to us wrapping up our terms at the end of November, we have a meeting with BH&A, get an idea of how they work, who they are, what services and really kind of just feel out how they would work with us. And then after which point we could, have that conversation with that team, understand how they work, what their schedule could potentially be like, essentially have an interview process with them, even though they are the only firm. So after that interview meeting process, we could do one of two things. We could recommend to town council to move into negotiations with them, or if we felt that it wasn't a good fit, then we could simply say thank you very much for your time, and then re-advertise the RFQ.
I think in the interest of everyone's time, whether this company, BH&A, is the best, and they're certainly highly qualified, at this point in time is almost irrelevant, in my opinion, because we would almost be irresponsible to only have one. Therefore, obviously, we're going to recommend one. I think with whatever mistake or misstep may have occurred, in the advertising that we just reissue. And if what you had said, Jeff, that all of the firms are at their maximum now, we may say to the town council, look, we want to re-advertise again until we get at least 3 to choose from. And then if it's more than 3 or 3, we will then interview and then make a recommendation. Because if I'm the council member sitting there at the meeting, we make the presentation, the first thing I'm going to say is, well, you recommended them because it's the only one you had to recommend. So what does your recommendation really mean? So we don't need to force the issue. We have a highly competent firm, it appears. So I would strongly suggest that whatever our reality is as to being reappointed or not being reappointed, that we re-advertise.
Okay, and that was essentially the third option. We simply just work with the finance director, re-advertise it, put forth another deadline. If these folks would like to reapply again, we can certainly have them do so.
Well, I think if we did that, we should at least acknowledge to them in writing that we thank them
Yes.
for taking the time to make the presentation to us, and we will hold it. But in the interest of just good practice, we're going to solicit and try to get at least additional submissions so that we can decide.
Sure.
But we should certainly commend them for taking the time.
So, I mean, in addition to the advertisement and everything, I also took the time to reach out to, how many firms? About 10 different firms that are local to Rhode Island, and sent them all the information, sent them the link to the BidNet, just saying, inviting them to join the the RFQ submittal process. So, you know, there were a few that respectfully declined because they were busy. And it puts us kind of in a tricky spot because, again, we're right up against election time. Our terms are concurrent with the council. We may have a completely different council, we may not. Priorities may change, and it's unfortunate that we're at this point now, as opposed to, you know, perhaps 6 months ago, but the reality is we are where we are.
Well, I think in fairness to all of us, we did everything we could to get to this point faster. And the reality of the council is what it is. I mean, if the opinions, if the majority goes in one direction or the other, so be it. We'd rather know it than not. But I don't think any council person would reflect on one and say that was sufficient. I think all of them would look and say, you know, in the interest of good business practice, professionalism, we need to show the people that we had more than one firm with which to choose from. We may still make the wrong choice, but at least we can show that we had more than one to choose from.
Is it possible to, you know, bring them in and interview them in parallel to re-advertising? Kind of keep 2 lanes going at the same time?
No, I would say that's going to put us in a sticky spot legally, because we want to make sure that we're treating each applicant the same way.
Well, I mean, I would assume you would tell them what we're doing. Like, hey, you know, we only got you back. We need to re-advertise, but in the spirit of keeping the momentum going, we'd like to bring you in, knowing that we may have 1 or 2 more apply.
I would hold off, if we're going to re-advertise, I would hold off interviewing all the firms at the same time. Typically, when we get to the interview point, we do want to make sure that we're asking qualified candidates the same questions. We can't deviate from, you know, so we'd want to have our list of questions, make sure we're all in agreement with those questions. And it's typically easier to kind of knock them off one after the other in one night, and then that way we have a good comparison. We're not going back and thinking, okay, well, now what did they say? We don't want to appear that we're favoring any applicant that has previously applied either.
But I think what Frank and I think what Bob said earlier,
we should acknowledge the receipt.
Oh, certainly.
Okay, and say, we are going to re-advertise this. Unfortunately, you were the only respondent, and we feel we want to have more than just your application. You don't need to resubmit. We have yours. We're gonna wait until we have the results of the second advertisement. But I think we definitely have to acknowledge
Oh,
what
certainly.
they've done. Thank you.
So we would be re-advertising on the assumption that we didn't get more because firms didn't see the RFQ. If that turns out to be incorrect and they just aren't applying because they are too busy or they're not interested in the project and we still only get one back, what do we do then?
Well, that's one of the risks that we take, is if we re-advertise, these folks, their potential slot that they have carved out for North Smithfield could go away. So we run the risk of perhaps getting no packages, just playing devil's advocate. There have been instances where, in my career, where my company has been the only firm that has applied. We interviewed, and they did award us the job. I have not been a part of an instance where we interviewed, and then that was, okay, thanks, you're the only one we interviewed, but we're gonna go a different direction. I have not been a part of that situation. Not saying that it doesn't exist, but just in my time working in the public bid world, that has happened.
Yeah, but the flip side of that analysis or analogy is also very likely to occur, which would be far worse, which is that if we go directly to the town council with only the one, and they immediately respond and say, no, we want to re-advertise, we don't want to be forced to choose from one, then we've done the same thing but in reverse. I mean, I think at this point, every other news broadcast speaks of some economic downturn to various degrees. We've heard the sky was falling now for 6 to 8 months, which there implies that construction activity, by definition, would have to slow down if you have an economic slowdown. So it stands to reason that when the architectural and engineering firms get through this last queue, there may be an abundance of firms, highly competent firms, that are ready. And since we don't have a gun to our head, we have nothing other than, sadly, the YMCA issue. I mean, I don't think we have any choice. I think the only way we would have a choice is if we decided as a committee to send correspondence to the town council advising them that we only received one application. Mm-hmm. Do they want us to interview and make a recommendation on that one, or they prefer us to re-advertise? If they say to us, we're willing to hear your interpretation or results of the only bidder, then I say we'll go full speed ahead. But if they kick it back and say, you know, that's really, we don't want to say to the people that we chose this firm because they were great, but they were also the only one. You know, they're going to want to say we had an exhaustive search and we found the most qualified.
Strictly from a financial standpoint, I'd be surprised if the council were okay with a number from one firm.
We don't have any costs, though.
Right, but I mean,
That would be the next step.
ultimately,
So again, when it comes to costs, we don't do cost numbers with this. In Rhode Island, it's strictly a qualifications-based. We score them based on what their qualifications are, and then the highest firms we start to negotiate with. So that was one of the reasons why we had pushed council to budget a number for the Halliwell master planning. So then that way, at least we would have a starting point. But now we kind of have to figure out, or they have to figure out where the money to pay whatever consultant we bring on is going to come from.
Jeff, because this is a public process, BH&A, if we decided to start negotiating with them, already know that there is no one else. So that's not much of a there's no leverage there whatsoever for negotiation. So on multiple levels, it's not practical unless we had a limitless budget and money was not the issue. They're gonna know by default, well, gee, there's nobody else. I mean, we'll negotiate in good faith, but we don't really have to be too concerned because there's nobody else to compare us to.
Well, that becomes a discussion when you go into negotiations, is they look at what was put forth in the RFQ, and they say, okay, if these are the items that you want, it's gonna be X amount. And then if we need to figure out, you know, okay, well, we can live without this part, or we need to add another part, that's where the negotiation comes in. So we would ask them for a proposal letter to confirm costs. That would then have to go into an executive session. That negotiation would happen with the administrator and at some point the town solicitor. So there's a bit more.
No, but the point is, there's only one entity.
Right.
There's no competition, so they're going to ask for what they want. And they either get it or they walk away. And they're going to know that they're the only player, so the advantage goes to them. You always want the advantage when you're in negotiations.
In some instances, that's how it works, but in other instances, you know, I know I have gone through this process, and we will ask, okay, what is the budget number you are working with? Because you know, we want the job, we want to work with you. So I don't think they'd be coming in and be like, oh, okay, we're the only ones, we're gonna, you know, charge you an arm and a leg for it. That's really, in my experience, not how it works. Being the only one, we want, you know, I'm surprised that well, typically one of the questions we ask during the RFQ process is, what is your budget, if it's not identified? And then that way, the firm will know if, you know, if it's worthwhile going after it or not.
Well, then I guess I would make a recommendation of two things for members to consider. We either go back and decide to re-advertise, notifying this firm that we appreciate it and we hope that they can hold their position, or we send a memorandum up to the council saying, we only received one. Do you want us to proceed, or do you want us to re-advertise? Let them, they're the elected officials, they're the ones that are going to make the decision. They know as well as we do that come November, some of them may not be there. All of them may be there, I don't know. We only know of one that is not running, so most of them could return. And so I would suggest one of those two things, that we either push it up to them and let them make the decision and tell us what to do, or suggest to them that we only had one and we think we should re-advertise.
I wouldn't be comfortable sending the one recommendation to the council. I don't, as you pointed out, I think it's important that we do as much of our due diligence as possible and get as many proposals as possible. And we are not under any kind of time constraint. In fact, I think with our terms ending in the end of November, it might be in our best interest not to push this too far and maybe try and re-solicit, try and get more proposals in the next month or so. And then if we're all fortunate enough to come back as new council, or if they all remain the same council, then I think we can hit the ground running, hopefully with some additional submissions, and we can start interviewing them. But I think doing anything prior to the end of our term is a little hasty, because who knows who will be around. I hope we're all back around. I think we all worked well together, but you never know. And I think it would reflect better on us as a body if we did as much as we can to get as many submissions, even if it's an additional one or two. While they're great on paper, I don't know what else is out there. I would like to see what other companies put forward, because this is my first exposure to this. So I think it'd be better to try and re-solicit and advertise again.
If we did want to go through this process again, do we have to go back to the town council, or can we just?
I was actually thinking that I would reach out to the finance director, and we already have approval to go out for RFQ. I can talk with the council president and the town administrator, see what their feelings are, and certainly get their reactions first. And then if they want us to, I know they've closed out their November 7th meeting. They don't have a November 7th. So it might be one of the last actions of the current council if they do decide to say, but let me take a moment to reach out to Council President Biergard and see what his reaction might be. Because it could very well just be as simply as asking the finance director just to edit the Word document. We already have the approval to go into the RFQ from the council.
Is there a cost associated with the resoliciting, a newspaper advertisement or anything of that sort?
If there is, it would be minimal.
Yeah. Not that it would inhibit us from going forward, I was just curious.
Yeah.
But in light of that, though, Jeff, the only thing I think is that I think it would have more weight if there was a motion made by this committee indicating that we only received one response. We believe we need to look at more than one firm, so we would like permission to re-advertise. I think it has more weight if it comes from the body and says this, because we're showing them at least the fact that, yeah, we know that ultimately you're gonna tell us you want more than one firm to choose from, so we might as well just come out and be assertive and say, we wanna re-advertise.
I think you're right about that, and we can form the recommendation in such a way that, you know, whatever form it takes, whether it's, you know, an informal discussion with the TA and council president, or whether we have to wait for them to make a motion in their meeting or whatever.
Yeah, the administration of it is
Sure.
secondary. I think we should indicate that we feel as a committee that we need to re-advertise.
Can I ask this question? You said you reached out to a number of firms
Yes.
because you realized the advertising didn't go in exactly how you thought it was going to go. Did you reach out to them before the deadline?
Oh, yes.
And we had no response from any of them?
I received a couple responses of them declining the invitation.
I guess where I'm going is, I think we should take the action that you're recommending, Robert. However, maybe we should wait until February or March to re-advertise, because if you reached out personally to 9 or 10 firms locally and none of them responded, then we may, even if we re-advertise in December, we may be in the same boat we're in right now. So why don't we let a couple of months go, and advertise in February or March, see what the economy's doing, see where these people are as far as workload. It might be more beneficial to us to do it then.
Is there a minimum threshold for how many of these people would feel comfortable seeing before we could? Probably over one. Make a decision, well, more than one. I mean, at least 3? I mean, what are we looking for?
Well, but
I guess I'm going to the same place Bob was thinking, like, you know, to your point, you reached out. What happens if we do this, whether it be December or March, and we're still stuck with one? Do we just have the same conversation again?
well, I agree wholeheartedly with the premise. It's not the time. The time can be discussed. It's saying to the council, we want to re-advertise. I totally agree. If we then say, in the interest of all we know to be, or what we think is true, we would prefer to delay until January. We can defer to Jeff for his opinion. And if we say, we will be back in touch with the administration when we want to resubmit, but we owe the council the report that says we did get this. We think we should hold and get more than one. And we'll decide when we think we should post it. So, you know, I think we cross all the bridges if we do that.
How long was the RFQ open for?
Month and a half.
Month and a half. Okay.
And Jeff, I know we're taking the chance that this company at some point may pull 3 other projects.
Yep.
Say, well, you know, guys, but I really don't think that any council person, knowing that the public is watching, is going to want to tie up a contract with only one firm. There's too much pressure out there to say, well, folks, how do we know if the company down the street, now, if we prove that we submit twice for
My company just installed a fire sprinkler system in a local municipality. And it went out to bid 4 times. And all 4 times, we were the only bidder. And they finally awarded us the project, and we installed it. And the reason it went out to bid 4 times was it wasn't acceptable for them to have just one bidder or one respondent, until they finally stretched it out as long as they could, and they awarded us the contract. And I think a lot of municipalities look at spending money in the same manner.
This track is fine, that we've all been discussing, but if we're going to, past this second re-advertisement, if we're going to third or fourth, that's gonna to me, that's gonna show me that we're not serious about our project. So while that community may have done their due diligence because it's based on cost, if we do it, re-advertise more than twice, it's gonna show folks, oh, we're very wishy-washy, we're not as serious. And I think this committee especially is very serious about getting stuff done for the Halliwell property. So I just wanted to caution us that we're not gonna, I think if we're gonna do it one more time, fine. I'm in agreement with that.
And not, please don't misconstrue, I'm not advocating for going out 4 times on this, but I'm just trying to illustrate the point that once may not be enough.
Yeah, but in light of that, all we have to do is say to the council, we can put it in the form of a question. We can say, we believe we need more than one to make a recommendation, and ask them if they have a minimum that they are going to require. If they say, we will defer to you if you advertise twice and you get 2, or you get 1, then we will proceed. So there, the burden of the decision is not on us, because ultimately, we can be as aggressive as we want to be. And if we hit a wall, we hit a wall. So let them tell us, yes, we respect the fact that you are trying to protect the community by getting more than 1. But if you find that the market just isn't there, yeah, we'll draw the line at the second solicitation, and then you can make your recommendation. Because that allows them to make the decision, which reinforces the fact that they are in control, and they are by the nature of the fact that they're the elected officials. So I would move, if you want, that we have a motion or a recommendation to the report, a brief report by the chair to the town council, advising them of the results of the first advertisement, and requesting authorization to re-advertise at a date of our choosing, and then further ask them if they have a prerequisite for a minimum number of potential candidates. And if they don't, you can include in that text that we suggest, after the second solicitation, we close and we go with what we've got. I mean, you can reword it as you'd like, but that's the spirit, and it seems to be.
I'll second what Bob said.
I just question if we should add in whether we want them to get back to us on a minimum number of applicants, because then if we re-solicit and we get 1 and they say we'd rather see 2, we'd rather see 3, then where does that put us? Does that stall us where we want to go? I mean, I think we definitely seek their input on other factors, but I don't know if we need their input on how many bids we need to. I think we can make that determination and then bring it up to them. I just feel like we might get handcuffed if they want more than 1 and we are only able to get this same one or one other one and not including this one the next round.
Well, that's why I think we should be assertive.
What I
and
might
state-
suggest is that we make the motion to re-advertise based on the results of this, this round, all right? And then further in that conversation with council, whether if it's Councilman Corvo giving his update at one of the meetings, we just have that discussion. and say, you know, we only might get one again for this. Are you going to kick it back to us until we get 2 or 3? And just simply ask the question. Because we do run, you know, if we ask for an arbitrary number of proposals to come in, like Scott said, we could very well be handcuffing ourselves and like, oh, okay, well, we only got 2, but they want 3. So now we have to re-advertise again and hope that we get 3 and tell BHNA and firm number 2, okay, we're gonna re-advertise again. Can you please submit again? Thank you for submitting for the first and second times. We need you to submit again.
Well, but that's when I said what I did. I indicated that upon the receipt of the second solicitation, we tell the council that we're ready to go. We don't, because if you say to anyone, you're gonna get into that age-old, anyone in construction knows, 3, 3, 3. You know, it's a default response by anyone when you talk about anything in the design and the construction. 3 bids, 3 prices, 3 this, 3 that, so that we can compare. And yes, we would be putting ourselves in a corner. So part of that motion would be to say, once we get the second solicitation, we will act on it. Don't give them the opportunity unless they see it and they read through the lines. Be assertive and say, we're going to advertise the second time because we'd like to have more than one that we can interview.
Right.
And leave it at that. And if they're going to say to us, oh, well, by the way, we want 2 minimum, obviously, or we want 4 minimum, then at least we can react to that. Let them dictate before the fact what they want instead, because otherwise we're still going up there not knowing what they want. Let them, force them to react.
And in precedent-wise, I believe, and if anybody knows better, they can certainly correct me, and I can certainly stand to be corrected. I believe the MBRTF, when they went through the police station, they only got 2, Tecton and another firm. So, and again, I could stand corrected. I'll let those folks correct me if I need to be. But if I'm recalling correctly, that's what I had heard at one of the council meetings.
I think even if we resolicit, we get 1 again, say it's BH&A, from my perspective, there's no guarantee that they will automatically get it anyways, because there is a process we need to go through, interviewing them, seeing if they're the right fit, entering into negotiations. So it's a multi-step process that it's not an automatic, well, we got 1 bid, we got 1 applicant again, let's just go with them and let's see. We could go through a process, figure out they're not the right fit for us and have to resolicit again. So just so members of the public know that it's not an automatic, one comes in and they're the automatic
Right.
winner.
Right.
There's still a road to go down to see if they're the right fit for us.
Yeah. I mean, all things aside, knowing this firm and reading the RFQ, their package that they gave to us, I think would be a win for the town. That's just, you know, to bring them on. But I also agree with the fact that we need to make sure that, again, we're doing our due diligence, so.
It's interesting that there's no projects in Rhode Island, but somehow they found this incorrect advertisement.
There are some marketing directors that are more diligent than others. And, you know, as I said, the online advertisement, with the corrections that were made, there just might not have been a box checked, you know. I believe when it first got put in, it was a 300 code for engineering and survey equipment, as opposed to architectural and engineering.
There would be no reason for the average firm to look at a 300 proposal.
Right. So, but there, I mean, as I reported to the committee, I was able to see the 12 firms that did pull the documents. It does show, it's public, but you gotta pay for it to be public, but because my firm pays for it, I was able to see who pulled the documents. So there were a number of engineering firms and architecture firms that did see the documents, so.
So, question. This one saw it submitted.
Mm-hmm.
You saw 12 that saw it, didn't submit. then you reached out to say 10.
Mhm.
Of the 12 that didn't respond but saw it, are any of them that same 10?
There was one that I reached out to that also pulled the documents.
So realistically, 21.
Mhm. And some of them, because it was likely coded incorrectly, were not architecture engineering firms. I did do a Google search on all of them, just because I'm nosy and like to know what we're getting into. There, of those 12 that pulled documents, 2 or 3 are national websites that pull bid documents for their own websites. So it's kind of like a network of bidding. So you might, BidNet is what Rhode Island uses for their advertisements, but there are other websites that pull from BidNet to advertise in their website because people sign up for their website as opposed to BidNet. So 2 or 3 of those firms were that. So theoretically, I would say we had potentially 18 qualified folks. I told my firm that they couldn't submit because ethically and legally, that just opens up a whole can of worms, and I don't think they want me to be their boss for this project. My boss would not be happy to be bossed around by me.
So going into the re-advertisement, the likelihood of getting additional submission isn't strong. Right.
It's the hand that we've been dealt, so if we're gonna, say, let's deal another round and see where we end up.
I think we should put it off till next year.
Then I think the only snafu with that is we have to request from the council that they waive us from meeting monthly. Because according to our resolution, we are required to meet once a month.
Yeah, but that's a procedural matter. They can
Yeah.
easily do that.
Yeah.
But I think we shouldn't, the circumstances are what they are. We have a highly competent and qualified entity. It is a bit of a mystery why upwards of 20 may have seen it, some accurately, some inaccurately. But again, I think there would be a way legally for you as the chair to get back in touch with BHA, whether it's in a phone conversation or via email, thank them, indicate that for due process, we want to re-solicit. It's no reflection on them. They're a highly qualified firm. We thank them, and we wish and hope that they resubmit. But in the interest of due diligence, the committee, after consultation with the council, has decided to re-advertise once. And then, yeah, if we still have only them, of course, we'll find a way to cross every bridge, because, I don't think you want to disqualify the only bidder you have.
Right.
So it is an inherent disadvantage, no matter how you look at it.
Right.
We want more than one. But we still, we don't even know at this point. This is just the first baby step. We don't even know if the budget for design would be funded. So, we have 7 steps more. And I just don't want them, I don't want the council to have the default reaction, which I wouldn't fault them if they did, that folks, we only got one. We really want more than one. So I think we should proceed. When we re-advertise, it could be a function of whatever this committee decides.
Yep.
We're never going to get it done before the election, therefore, what difference does it make whether we wait until the first of the year? I mean, it's just not going to, nothing. We're going to be dealing with a new council no matter what we do.
Yep.
So we have a motion on the table, so I would think that's whether we will inform the council we want to re-solicit. Would it be then, so we still need to vote on that, but once that's cleared up, then I would assume we would wait for the council's response, and then we as a body can decide when we want, if they say yes, the council says yes, please re-solicit, then would we then have that conversation on when we want to go out, or is it just assumed, well, they say yes at the next opportunity, whether it's end of November or December?
I mean, I don't think we need to have a meeting about it. I think we could probably say, well, if we're thinking of re-advertising, let's pick a time now, and then that way we get it on our side, we can, revise the RFQ to make the dates, and deadlines. So, I mean, honestly, let's see.
Probably within the next 90 days.
Well, Jeff, as a what if, for example, what does your firm have in queue? How many projects does your firm have in queue?
We have quite a few.
But do you consider this to be close to your maximum in the last few years?
No, but we're always, our doors are always open for opportunities that come through. There's never a time where we have said, okay, that's it, we're maxed out, we're not gonna, look at any more. There may be times where we become more selective in what we're looking at and what we choose to go after based on current workloads and projections. I'm not part of those discussions. Those are for the higher ups, based on what they want to go after and all of that. I just know I'm in charge of staffing everything when it gets signed on the dotted line. But right now, we are upwards of, I'm not going to say because I'm going to misquote the number that we have. We have upwards of 70 to 75 projects going on right now, both in business development and actual projects. So, and we are busy. We're very busy. The one thing I would like to avoid is a lot of firms have summer slammers. So if they're working on higher education or schools, or if that's part of their portfolio, there's a lot of work that does get done from March, April, May, June, because June through the beginning of September is when the construction needs to be done. So it does peak up for those firms that are dealing with higher ed or schools K through 12.
Let me ask you, if you have access through your firm for the state site, you then can see how many other postings may have occurred for the section that we are speaking of?
I could certainly take a look.
Of this general tenor? I would be curious if you saw that there were 10 other postings by municipalities for similar type projects, and they had hits from 20, 30, 10, or 5. That might help us gravitate closer to Bob's concern over whether or not the interest, generally speaking, is out there until January. I mean,
Yeah.
I would be very curious if you found that we are atypical or typical.
Right. I don't think as much as people like to think North Smithfield is atypical, we're pretty typical as far as, projects go and everything. I would say we'd want to, December is shot, basically, because, you have your first 2 weeks and then everyone goes on Christmas break, so nothing really gets done between vacations and Christmas break. So I would say that we would want to hit strong and probably have a deadline middle to end of January. And then at that point, we're not competing with the summer slammers at that point, so we may not get overlooked. I think right at the beginning, we advertise middle of December, have it be open for the month and a half like we did for this one. And by the end of January, we have another round of qualified candidates coming through. I think that would be perfectly acceptable. But the further we wait into February, March, April, we're going to compete with, because I know companies like BH&A and mine, we tend to do, libraries, community centers, but we also are doing other civic type buildings, so schools and what have you. So I wouldn't want to be putting us in competition with those things as well.
I think we should proceed in that direction. And indicate as part of the motion that they authorize us to suspend our meeting schedule until such time as.
Sure.
So it's relevant for us to continue.
Okay.
I thought we were all in staggered terms. I didn't think we were all just
No.
Oh, we're not, okay?
No, we're all concur,
like the school committee.
Nope.
You're on for 4, you're on for 2.
all 9 of us are on for the same 2 years that council is,
Okay,
so.
that's stupid. Because you could lose the whole, potentially lose the whole committee.
Well, of the 9 members, we do have the 1 town administrator appointee. And we also have 1 member from the planning board that needs to be on the committee. So, the planning board hasn't made any official motions. I have requested that it be put on the next agenda too. So you might be stuck with me depending on how the motion goes.
It makes sense to stay stable at this point.
So,
Did everyone get a letter? Because I got a letter.
yep.
I said, yeah, okay, I want to see that. That was it.
Okay, so right now, we have a motion to recommend advising town council of the results and request for a re-advertisement of the RFQ. For a December opening and mid to end of
Hey,
January closing.
Jeff, so the schedule that you laid out was posting this mid-December.
Right.
Are we going to run into the same issue that we had with this where nobody sees it because those notifications go out and people are out for the holidays?
I'm gonna make sure that I will work with the finance director to make sure the coding is correct and that it would occur, let me look at the calendar. You know what? Why don't I just pick some dates right now?
Yeah, I would say,
Why don't you advertise effective January 1st and go to February 15th? That would be, then you get past the Christmas.
yeah, it's not so much the coding, it's just that are people going to be in the office and
Right.
seeing these notifications
'Cause
come through?
I was even gonna say, advertise it on the 12th, which is the Monday of December. And then have it be due back on the 31st of January.
Why can't we do it January 1st and be back by February 15th? I think that way you get through December.
Well-
You're not confused with people leaving, going on vacation, oh, I gotta take care of Christmas plans. I think we'd be better off doing that. But,
Well, it does give the entire month of January, and I would,
yeah.
am I safe in making the assumption that firms kind of have a boilerplate thing that they can, and then they just need to plug in specifics of the town and the project that we're looking for, but a lot of this that I see here is probably a lot of boilerplate stuff where they just, this is the projects we've done, these are the people who are on staff, so a lot of that is just there anyways, so, and it still gives them the month of January when everyone will be back at work and hopefully recharged and ready to go.
Which is kind of disappointing, right? Because I agree with you 100%. This is probably 95% boilerplate. I'm not denigrating their abilities by any means, but the fact that nobody else wanted to do this, and just punch in some information and put this forth is disappointing. Let's hope we can generate other interest.
Jeff, quick question.
Mm-hmm.
We re-advertise, right?
Yep.
Does firms like yours, do they have somebody going out there combing these postings, or do they have some type of,
It depends on the firm.
or do they just automatically get a notification that it's been posted?
They should get a notification, but it also depends on the marketing director, who's in charge of going after new jobs, if there's folks that are actively looking for jobs. So it very much depends on the firm that's looking for these things.
Was there any reason to, what was included? What information did we give the potential bidders? Did we give them the report from Weston and Sampson?
So what we provided was the Weston and Sampson report, the next steps memo that Weston and Sampson put together, our report that we had put together, and there was one other thing. All of the information that we had put forth with the RFQ for Weston and Sampson to propose on. So every plan, drawing, information that I had in regards to the Halliwell School was included in that. There were 4 appendices. So they had, we had provided them with quite a bit of information. Because we're figuring that's their starting point.
I like the mid-December timeframe.
Okay. So, I mean, we have had 2 months to put forth, to put together packages. So it may get advertised on the 1st of December, but then the deadline is really where we kind of shoot for. And if we're going to do the 31st of January, we could certainly do that too. We can pick, we don't have to stick with a month and a half. We could do 3 months of advertisement. That's a little excessive, but, because most of the time, we, like every good college student, we wait until the week before it's due and start working on it then.
I think January 31st is plenty of time.
Okay.
Again, most of what they're doing is marketing has done 90% of what these firms need to do, and then they just decide that they want to pursue it. So I would say the 31st is more than enough.
So I'll read back this motion. So, the motion that we have now after some more discussion is the motion to recommend advising town council of the results and request for re-advertisement for a December 1st start and a January 31st deadline.
Again, you can also ask them for the authority to suspend our meetings until such time.
We'll take that as a second motion, as another motion. We'll treat them as 2 separate things. So, we'll have, Mr. Najarian, are you okay with that being your motion?
Yes, we're just advising the council of the one respondent.
Mm-hmm.
We're asking for authority to re-advertise with the deadlines and dates that are listed.
Perfect. Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a
Then I
second?
second.
I have a second from Mr. Mayo. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Then we will take that second motion for suspending our meetings until such time we've received bids to, packages to review.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Second. You know, I meant to, I meant to reach out to the DPW for that one. I know at, I believe,
We have a motion on the table, could we?
oh, thank you,
Unless the question
sir.
is germane to the motion,
So we have,
then we should settle the motion and then we can discuss tear down.
he's after my seat.
Robin, Sharon, exactly. Whoa.
All right, so we have a motion to suspend for the months of November, December, and January, seconded by Mr. Mao. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sorry.
All right. It's not on the agenda, so we can't take any action on it.
Is everybody having fun?
Yeah.
Can we go knock it down ourselves?
Mr. Zelinski, do you know where we stand with the demolition of the Halliwell School?
Yeah, we received a extension, so we were informed last night by the Director of Public Works that we have a 6-month extension.
For the abatement? Okay. Do we have any updates on when it's going to actually be done?
Oh, no.
Okay.
Do we have any updates on how much money we have to do it?
I thought-
About 400,000.
It's only going to keep getting more expensive.
Oh, yeah, go shoot the messenger, you know?
Well, do we have a firm price? We don't know that.
We had the folks that did the abatement testing did a cost estimate for the abatement work, which was 2 and change, 287.
Yeah, I think that's whole project, if they can tear it down.
Yeah.
Budget season's on
We just had it, I feel like.
So, this is, 10th month, so in, 2 more months, we start, actually, 3 more months, they start coming in, so.
Could it potentially be that we, because we have the $400,000 for the decommissioning, or what's left of it, and it,
80 came out of that, though, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
75.
Okay.
So if we have 325 for abatement, can we get a company to come in and abate it, and then have the fire department use it as a training?
Muster, burn it?
Yeah, have it,
They've got, DEM and EPA and.
That's a lot of burning, yeah.
All
All
that
right.
stuff goes, it gets friable, gets up in the air. I like the idea, but no.
okay,
This is not a volunteer fire department somewhere up in mid-state New York where they can do that.
sure. Well, I know they did the training exercise on the corner of Pacheco.
Oh, is that what happened to that house? We
Yeah.
had asbestos shingles that caused it to bid all that before they
Yeah.
put it up.
Clearly.
You know what, I didn't even know they did, I didn't even know that.
I believe they did, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think you can do that with multiple.
Sure. And we'd still be left with the slabs, so. So that's where we are.
I really have nothing to add to it, I wish I did, but
Okay.
I'm going home.
So that sounds like a motion to adjourn. So I'll make that motion to adjourn.
How's it feel to be the lowest among the?
We have a second for Mr. Simpkins. All in favor? Aye. All right, we are done for this evening.